Good morning, everyone. I should say good day because some of you are probably not in the same time zone as me. In fact, I'm confident that you won't be. I am so glad to be with you. Welcome to a Live with Kevin, a very special Live with Kevin this morning on a separate day for a slightly different purpose. But if you've been with us before, you're going to love this. And there we go. That's what we didn't need right there. Listen, I'm so glad to be with you. If you're here with us live, I hope that you will start by saying hello in whatever social channel you're in and telling us where you're from. We'd love that because we want you to be a part of the next few minutes. While you are here, imagine that you're joining us for a cup of coffee or a beverage of your choice, depending on what time of day it is for you, and just share your questions, your comments, and ideas because it will make for a better conversation because really what we want here is a true conversation. So before I introduce my guest, which I'll do in just a second, let me tell you why you're here. You might have joined me previously here for a live podcast episode or watched a recording of one of those, but that's not what we're here to do today. Today, we're having a conversation with a friend of mine and a former expert who attended last year's virtual LeaderCon, the premier virtual leadership conference, and this year featuring over 30 experts across 4 days. I'll tell you more about that later, but for now, you can learn more by going to virtualleadercon.com. And having said all of that, specifically today, we're going to talk about finding your calling. Now, chances are you're here because that idea intrigued you, excited you, or made your heart sing. But even if you just stumbled onto this live because you happen to follow me, I promise that right now you're in the right place. And if you've ever thought about this, or now that you're thinking about it because I asked, you are absolutely 100% in the right place. I want to welcome you to this very special preview, if you will, of Virtual LeaderCon. Our guest today is Jim Huling. Here he is. He's with me. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we will dive right on in. Okay. Jim is the co-author of the multiple-time best-selling book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, which has been translated into at least 11 languages. His career spans 37 years of corporate leadership, ranging from Fortune 500 organizations to privately held companies, including more than a decade as CEO of a company that was recognized 4 times as one of the 25 best companies to work for in America. His organizations have won national awards in all sorts of ways, and he's won regional and national awards as a workplace of choice. After many years as a global managing consultant at Franklin Covey, he is now in the next phase, the next chapter of his life, which we'll talk about in a second. He's been on my Remarkable Leadership podcast. He was an expert at Virtual LeaderCon in 2021. He is my friend. His name is Jim Huling. Jim, welcome. So glad you're here, my friend.
Thank you, Kevin. First of all, thank you for having me back. There is some special credential to being with Kevin Eikenberry a second time, and I plan to brag about that for the next 3 or 4 years. You know, I've been on his show twice. You know, it's gonna be. I may have it on my business card. Appeared twice.
I don't know about
Kevin
that.
Eikenberry.
Well, so first of all, you know, when we decided, when we started to plan for this year's Virtual LeaderCon, the team made a list of who did we have from last year that we wanted to have back, and you were one of the very top of the list. You're one of the most popular sessions last year, and then you denied us. So tell me what you're going to be doing September 12 to 15 when I'm sitting right here leading Virtual LeaderCon.
Yes, my friend. And by the way, I'll be thinking about you the whole time, but I am once again taking the love of my life, 40 years of incredible marriage to my sweetheart, whose favorite place in the world is Tuscany. And we're going back for the 7th time this year. There are friends of ours who say that's the only reason she probably stays with him as he goes to Italy every year. I don't know. In the South, we say I married up, which is absolutely true.
Well, then, even if that is the reason, then just keep doing it. You
found
good enough. Stay with it.
40 years in, it's working for me. And anyway, all kidding aside, a really joyous, happy place and a chance to connect with people who every time I go teach me a different way of living, to be more present and to slow down a little and to be more thoughtful about significance rather than success. I get lots of lessons every time I go to that country and interact with those people. So I'm looking forward to it. And nothing less than that would have kept me off this year's.
Well, we are so glad that you'll be doing that. And I'm looking forward to the day when I get to meet that bride of yours.
Yes.
Because I introduced you as my friend, and absolutely feel that way, and yet we've
Yes.
only ever met like this, or maybe on a phone call. I don't know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm so glad that you're here. And for all of you that are joining us, here's the thing: Virtual LeaderCon is not done on these social platforms, done on another platform, which is highly, highly interactive. So really
Mhm.
what I want you all to do is ask us anything you want, whether it's what
Mhm.
we're talking about, whether it's the stated
Yeah.
topic or not. That's what we hope that you will do. And we can see your comments. Someone said, will this be recorded? Automatically, yes. So if you can't stay for the whole thing, you can come back to wherever you're at. Zanola, you looks like you're on LinkedIn, but whatever platform you're on, yes, you can come back and find it. And if you can't find it on that platform, take my name, put it into YouTube, and you'll easily find it there.
Mhm.
So we'll talk more about Virtual LeaderCon later, but I teased earlier, Jim, about your next chapter or next
Mhm.
stage. You are, quote, retired, but you also just told me a few minutes ago that you're busier than ever. And it's really
Mhm.
that work that I'm hoping we can chat a little bit about today.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah, so am I, and thank you so much for asking that. You've heard me say before that I just finished 15 years with what I think is the greatest company on planet Earth, which is the Franklin Covey organization, founded by Dr. Stephen Covey, Seven Habits. Everybody knows that. So I hope to carry that credential, all my life, because I'm so proud of that. And during that time, I had a chance to write the Four Disciplines of Execution, which you mentioned, and I appreciate you saying that as well.
I
However,
left my copy at home. I'm searching around for my other copy today in the office among this literally thousands of books in this office. Can't find it. I can't
oh
even
my God.
hold it up for everybody.
Well,
But
I know you've read it because I've seen that it's dog-eared and marked, and the pages are worn. And you clearly can articulate all the principles there. So we'll take it on faith. But thank you. But
we are
but
not.
it's
Do
so
not
it's so
test me on that at this very
do not
instant,
test
my
you. What
friend.
is on page 23? I don't remember. But I do think what a great chance, to talk about something that I think will have value, certainly for people in the middle of their life journey who are thinking about, is this all there is? Or if there are people closer to the end who might think, I've only got a little time left, what matters most? Or even way back at the beginning, if you're in the early stages of your life and your career, and I coach a lot of people who are in this demographic who are very sincerely saying, I have a lot of opportunities. I just don't know which one is the right one for me. So my hope is maybe I'll say a few things that might help any of those three groups of people, and maybe everybody in between. But the short version of that story is, I had this incredible gift of my life of 14, almost 15 years with the Franklin Covey organization. And by any other standard, Kevin, I think I would say, thank you, I'm done. I'm not going to ask for anything else in my life. It's one of the greatest chapters of my life. And yet, as that chapter began to gently and carefully feel like it was closing, I really started to feel another calling, which is our subject for today. Now, if you don't mind, just a couple of seconds, it might help have a tiny bit of context.
Yep.
And there's a part of my story you don't know, and it's never published in any of those biographies that you've seen, which is I
You
started
heard
my
it
life
here
as a
first,
musician.
everybody. You're
Yeah, I
hearing it here
started my
first.
life as a musician. In fact, I have a degree in music from a conservatory school, and I spent a year in New York and sang throughout Europe and did a number of things. I really thought I was called to be a musician. And then I really felt something different. I felt a calling to maybe not do something different, but have a different kind of life. And so I pivoted, as we like to say now, from music to business. And I spent 30 years as a technology executive and ended up being CIO of a couple of really big companies. And then I felt it again, Kevin, and I became CEO of a technology company. I was there 11 years, and that's where those awards were won and lots of great things were done. And even then, in those days, I would have said, okay, who's going to ask for more than this?
Life well lived, right?
And then there came this other calling, which was, I think, the truest one I've ever had, certainly the most powerful one, which that I really wanted to speak and teach and write. I wanted to get some sort of impactful message out so that, like Steve Jobs said, I could feel that I was leaving a dent in the universe. I could look back and say, hey, Kevin, look, see that dent right there? That's what I did, So I had those glorious 15 years, and I had this wonderful opportunity to write a book with Chris McChesney, and all those things were great. And one last time, Kevin, if you can stand it, what else you want? That's it. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I wouldn't even ask for anything more. And yet, to my great surprise, here came the calling again to say, now it's time, instead of speaking to large groups, instead of traveling the world. I gave 623 keynote speeches in 30 countries, Kevin, if you can imagine, in 15 years. I was all over the globe, but always speaking to groups that ranged from 100 to 10,000, somewhere in that range. And so I felt this calling all over again to say, now it's time to work intimately. Now it's time to work one-on-one. Now it's time to work with people who are leaders and people who aren't leaders. It's time to work with young people and older people, where all my work up to that point had been mostly with senior leaders in companies, you know. So I hope that wasn't too long, but I think it drives home the point that the first thing I want everybody to learn, or I want to help them learn, is that calling is not this one time, one place, one way thing. Calling is a living, breathing, evolutionary thing that changes as you change. You know, my sweetheart loves to say, every next level of your life will require a new version of you. And we like to joke at my house that this is the 7.0 version of Jim this year, you know, and I don't really know what that means. I don't have a features list for the new version, but I do think the principle is right. We keep evolving. And as we are willing to evolve, the nature, the size, the complexity, the scope of our calling evolves with us. And I hope that's helpful, because it's the thing I find people most confused about. You know, I haven't discovered it yet. Like it's this fixed, static thing. Like it's a memento that I lost, and it's somewhere. It's under the bed, or it's in a drawer. I've got to just find it. That's really not how calling is. Calling is a thing that comes to you as you are growing and evolving and doing other things.
Yeah. So Hannah asked a question, and it's over there. I think you can see it, and I'll put it up on the screen in a second. But I want to make a couple of comments, Jim, on what you said, because for all of you inside baseball about Jim and I, we've done this a couple of different times. Once on my podcast related to the last release of that book, once on Virtual LeaderCon, and it's like we've known each other forever. He has no idea the things I wrote down here that I might ask, and yet one of the things that I have written on this list is, and you already answered it, but I want to say it because I want to reinforce it for people. I said, does a shift in our calling negate everything we've done before? And you beautifully said, absolutely not. And I think that that's one of the reasons people get stuck, especially later. Like, well, you know, so I'll use me as an example. So I know what my calling is, right? But the way it plays out is changing. And I think that that's an important piece too,
I think that's
right?
so true.
Like the evolving could be the calling, or the evolving could be the way the calling plays out in the world, which is more my story, at least at this stage.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
And so I love that. So
can I say one thing on that I really think, Kevin, that you're so right. I hope everybody heard what you just said, that, you know, some people are trapped in the prison of their own success. You know, they just can't imagine a life outside of that success, or they can't imagine letting go of that. As I at one point let go of being a CEO and all that it brought with it, in order to literally start over, reinvent myself as a consultant, an individual, you know, but the willingness to do that is what opens up all the possibilities you just spoke about. And while it may seem scary on this side, it's phenomenal on the other side. So a lot of my journey is about proving to myself again that great joy lies just on the other side of fear. And if I can intelligently step through that moment of fear, I may very well find on the other side the very thing I've been dreaming about, you know, my whole life. Do you think that's true?
I'm writing this down. Great joy on the other side of fear.
Great joy on the other side of fear. And can I add to your list? Nothing is wasted. You know, look at me, for example. The first 20 years of my life, I was a performing musician, actor in shows and operas and things. And it's a story I've never told on the air. I saved it for you for today. But who would have imagined now, 45 years later, I would be calling on some of the very skills I learned as a young musician in order to walk out on a stage where there are 10,000 people that are about to listen and who are all hoping I have something worth hearing, you know,
worth listening
that I
to,
call
right?
upon that. Who would have thought, right? But you remember Steve Jobs? We're quoting him twice in one broadcast, aren't we? That's enough. Steve Jobs said, you can never connect the dots looking forward, but when you look back, they all make sense. I promise you, it's my story. Every step of my life has been a beautiful preparation for something that came later. And all that was really ever asked of me was the faith to believe that everything in my life was happening for me, not to me, that it was all going to sort itself out in the right way, in the right moments. And in part of my story is it certainly did. I wish I hadn't worried so much from time to time in my life.
Well, you and I could probably have a whole show on worry, right? And the
Oh my gosh.
folly, what I call the folly of worry.
Yes.
But I really love this point, and I want to get to Hannah's questions up here, and I'll let you
Please.
say a
Go
little bit more
ahead.
about that in a second. And I think that it's so, we could have the philosophical conversation that says, did all of that stuff work out to make it all make sense? Or because you saw it that way, did it all work out? And I
Yes.
think there's
Yes.
something about, it's like the whole thing of,
Right.
it
Right.
happened because you used an important 5-letter word, faith,
Mm.
that, and I know
Yeah.
that we share that as well.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and that is a piece of this.
Mm.
But I think it's so important for people. So much of what we're talking about isn't just the experiences, because most any
Mm.
of us, me included, could look at Jim's life and say, man, wow, if my life had been like that, I could make that shift. But the
Mm. Mm.
reality is that all of us have that choice in
Of
front of us
course.
all
Of
the time,
course.
right?
Yeah, and if you don't mind an overlay on that, just a shameless tag on to something brilliant you just said, is that there really are signs everywhere. I mean, but I think it's important, Kevin, for you and I to say, I'm not here today to impose any system of belief on anybody. Please choose for yourself. But I believe we're born with a purpose. I really do. And I think of it like a blueprint that's inside of me. And every day of my life that I am following the blueprint, I have joy and peace and serendipity and opportunity. Things happen. And by the way, I'm not saying it's never hard. My gosh, some days I think am I really still working as hard as I'm working right now? At 68
You said
years
that to
old.
me before we started.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, what am I doing? So I'm not saying easy, but I'm saying beautiful and clear and meaningful. There's signs everywhere. And even when I think about, for example, and let's go to Hannah's question for a moment, because she asked
Yep.
this beautiful question. And I won't tell a long story, maybe another day. But as a musician, I really began to realize that I was living in New York at the time, that I loved music and I did not love the life of a musician. They're two different things. So I really began to feel this calling to continue to love music and create a different life. And sort of out of the blue, my Kevin, it's probably good for people to know my parents both died when I was very, very young. So I lived a life in the beginning where mentors were precious things, and there weren't a lot of them for me. But when I had them, I was grateful for them. And a wonderful, what I would have called an older gentleman, Kevin, and holy moly, he's my age. He was my age.
I was going to say he's younger than you, right?
Oh my God. So he's casually at lunch one day, I was saying, I'm just not sure what I should do, and he said, well, if he's eating his lunch, he said, well, if I was your age, I'd go into computers. I think those are going to be the next thing. And literally something went just like that. And so I went back to school. I got another degree in computer science. I started life as a programmer, became a manager, a vice president, a CIO, ended up being CIO of 2 big companies, and ultimately CEO for 11 years of a really large technology company. And it was all sparked by that one. The right thing was said by the right person in the right moment. But I call that providence. That on that day he said it, and somehow, and in another place at another time, the long version, but short today, I sort of accidentally turned into a movie theater one day and saw this beautiful young woman who I knew from my workplace in accounting. And I thought, oh, I know her, and said hi, and she said hi. And here we are 40 years later, 2 kids, 3 grandkids, and probably more in love than ever we've been in our life. But if I hadn't turned into that theater that day, I don't know. It was a spontaneous thing. These things happen if we are looking for them. So the point hope I'm making, and if I'm being long-winded, please help me, is there are signs everywhere. So like in Hannah's case, I would say I made the transition by being open to the signs that were there. And I have a lifelong practice, Kevin, you've heard me say this before, of take a step, see if there's flow. Take a step, see if there's flow. You remember I said to you, my experience of this is physical, not intellectual. My experience of this flow is like a hand in the small of my back. Like when you were a child and your mom wanted you to move along and she just put her hand in the small of your back and just gonna ease you forward. God bless her. I lost my mom so early that
All
I
the
treasure
time.
that memory. Yeah.
Now
Well,
it's my
that's
wife.
how I experience.
Jim.
That's how I experience calling. Is I feel it like a hand in the small of my back. And so when I enrolled in that first computer science class, I felt that gentle support to take the next class and eventually get the degree and move on. When I was thinking about getting married, I felt that, which I do feel was my mom's hand, in the small of my back, easing me along. When I left the business world in the sense of being a CEO, went to Franklin Covey. That was a big leap of faith for me. And I felt that hand in the small of my back. And then, last December, you and I were talking about this the other day, when it came time to do something different, when I probably could have been a ceremonious honorary member of the Franklin Covey team forever. I don't know that I could have, but I'd like to think I could have. It's still, nobody's more surprised than me to hear that voice once again saying, now it's time for another chapter. Let's get started. Small hand in the back, just easing me. So Hannah, that's how I did it. Small move, do I feel some flow? Small move, do I feel some flow? If I don't feel flow, I wait. I ask for guidance. I try something different, but small move, wait for flow. That's my inelegant, unsophisticated way of building a great life.
So I've got to put a note up here and say hi to Tamara. Hi, Tamara.
Hey, Tamara.
Fort McMurray. Most people here have probably never been to Fort McMurray, Alberta.
No,
I have many times. Tamara knows that. We could just talk about your experience, which is fabulous, but I want to dive into a few questions, Jim.
Please,
and again,
please.
I want all of you who are listening, if you have questions, please share them. If you have comments, please share them. This is the closest we can come to replicating virtual LeaderCon without the platform that really allows us to do some of the cool stuff that we can do there. And we hope that you will join us there, virtualleadercon.com. And yes, 4 days, 30 smart folks like Jim.
Don't miss it.
You can do it all live completely for free.
Don't miss it.
We'll say more about that before we're done. But I want to know, we've been talking about calling as it relates to our work.
Yes.
And is it only about our work, Jim?
And the answer is, of course, it's not, right? But what makes life kind of fascinating in these times, I can't speak to Roman times, but I suspect there were similar things in those days as well, is that a lot of our life is about the work we choose to do. And frankly, a lot of the work we choose to do directly or indirectly affects the kind of life that we have. So I am, this, Kevin, I am not a fan of the phrase work-life balance. I believe that's a very artificial construct that leads people down all the wrong paths. But I'm a huge fan of work-life integration. So in my life, for example, if you watched me all day long, which I don't encourage you to do because it wouldn't be particularly interesting, but you would struggle to find a delineation between when I was working on my purpose through my work expression or when I was creating the rest of my life. You'd have a hard time because they're so seamlessly integrated. Now today, with the ability to work remotely and do other things, this is not as difficult as it was in, may I say, our day. But still, the concept is there, right? That think of it. I would encourage everybody to think of it this way. I'm trying to create a life, and that life includes purposeful work. But it also includes meaningful relationships and things that bring me joy and the opportunity to be of service and to make a difference. It includes a lot of things. But my work is an integral thread running through the whole fabric of what we would call my life. That's how I think about that.
Yeah. Again, one of the things I wrote down, work-life balance, knowing that we would take a different place. One of the members of my team, everybody calls it life-work balance, right? And the thing I like to say, and I love the idea of integration. The other thing about balance is, and one of the major places it takes people down to the wrong direction, Jim, is that there's like a place, and like I'm not in that place.
Yes.
But it's about, look at a balanced scale, like it's always moving. And so if we start to think about it that way, reframe it, however we want to choose to reframe it. I love the idea of integration too. It's like the idea of, and and I'll let you bounce off of this.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation in our organization about we're rebranding the company, and
Nice.
there'll be a new website that we'll probably announce during Virtual Leader Con. And I've just said that out loud for the first time. Blah blah blah. Anyway, here's the thing. We've been talking a lot about personal and professional development, and like from a search engine perspective, that doesn't say much, but it says a lot about who we are in that, because I've written for many years that we become a better leader, we become a better human.
Yes.
And vice versa, right?
And vice
And
versa.
so that's a big part of what we're about, is helping people be more effective in that integrated sort of
That's
way.
right.
Anything you want to add? And not about
Well,
my
sure.
situation, but
Oh, no.
anything you
Well,
want to add
first of
about
all,
that?
yeah, first of all, it's really hard, ladies and gentlemen, to follow Kevin Eikenberry, because now I need 3 pencils to write down things you say. Gosh, I'm glad this is being recorded. But I will say something that may be a little bit controversial, and I just say it from an open heart and hope everybody will no one will take any offense to this. I really feel like what has just happened, particularly in the United States over the last 2 years, maybe 3, that we call the Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffle or the Great Awakening, or I guess we'll call it something else today. But I really think this is a great thing that has happened. And I coach senior executives all day long who are probably not happy with me right now for making that statement, because it's been a source of pain and disruption to them. But what has really happened is a rebalancing and a humanizing of the whole idea of work. That, of course, there are times when you can't be in a physical office. Of course, there are times in my life, there are times when the needs of my family outweigh the needs of my workplace, and I need the space to deal with that in a way that keeps me whole. And then I come back to my workplace and I say to my family, there are times when my work responsibilities outweigh the immediate needs of my family. So, I think you and I've said one thing really powerfully already today, and I say it with great love. Try to stop thinking about your life like it was algebra, like it was this fixed thing that you could finally figure out and you'd have it right from now on. It would all just be right because you figured it out. My goodness, it just doesn't work that way. It changes all the time. It's like an organic thing that my one of the few things I remember my dad saying, Kevin, was he was trying to teach me how to play chess. And then one day he said quite casually, chess is like life. I think other people had said this, by the way, but I attribute it to my dad. He said, you move and then God moves. And it doesn't work the other way around, Jimmy. He said, he said, you got to move. And then when you move, the whole universe will respond. And that dance is how you live a great life. I remember this like it was yesterday. Well, look, here I am now at this age teaching that very principle I heard 65 years ago, I guess. That's what we're talking about. If people would stop thinking of it as this fixed thing, but think of it as this evolving thing, and then believe that the context of that is a situation where you're always being guided. You're really never alone. There are resources all around you. There are signs everywhere. There's opportunity to try something in the next thing. Don't allow yourself to buy into the lie of hopelessness. It's just not true. It's just an idea. But look around you and you'll find that all these resources and all these things are really there. You just have to be willing and open to go and access them.
All about the lens we choose, right? Okay.
Yes.
Tamara made a long comment. I'm not going to put it on the screen, but I'm going to say, she said, this was fate today because maybe I can find another passion and calling. And that's sort of why we did this. And, and so, okay, so let's just play off of what Jim's saying in relationship to that, right?
Yeah.
Here are the dominoes. We can go way back to the dominoes, but the domino was Lisa reaches out, the person on her team leading the Virtual Leader Con project. After the team said, yes, Jim is one of the people we want to bring back. And Jim says, I'm going to Tuscany. Sorry. Yeah. Right. So choices. To which we were disappointed. And that led me to thinking we should do some previews for Virtual Leader Con. And then there was a conversation, well, they should all be with people. And by the way, everybody, there's going to be 4 of these. And so be watching whatever platform you're on. And the conversation was, well, they should all be with people who are going to actually be there. And I said, they don't have to be. So 2 of them are with people who are, and 2 of them are with people who aren't. 2 of them are with people that I know. 2 of them are with people that I don't. And so then that led to, Jim, would you do this? Yes.
Yeah.
That led
Yes.
to us doing it. That led to it being today. That led to Tamara being here. Like,
Wow.
you
Isn't
tell
that
me,
amazing?
everybody,
Oh my gosh.
like, it's exactly what Jim was saying. And if I wasn't convinced that this was the right way for me to spend 30 or 40 minutes of my life, I am now.
Sure.
Right.
You do something different. And I just love that, Kevin, the way you laid that out where everybody gets that. There was no magic in that, even though it was magical in its effect. There was work involved. There were schedules to match up. There was internet links, which you had to remind me of at 8 o'clock this morning. There's all those things. Kevin and I are not saying, Ali Ali Oxenfree, it all just happened. We made it happen, but we made it happen in an intentional, thoughtful, purpose-based way, so that in the end, it's really no surprise at how beautifully it came out. And I've made one of my new best friends in the world over the last couple of years. It's Kevin Eikenberry, who I love and cherish. I wonder though if I might say to Tamara, because I saw she made a quick comment there, and I'd be so honored if you would tell me if you agree or disagree, Kevin, because I've heard you speak about this before. One of the ways you make a sequence of events like this happen is you start by taking a step.
You got to move. That's what you said earlier, right?
Right. So I noticed that someone was saying
they're at a standstill.
They're at a standstill and possibly wanting to be a teacher. I don't know if I was quoting it quite right, but if you are, for whoever said that, they were thinking about being, whatever your calling is, it'd be fine. Just substitute right now a person who feels something inside about they want to help others. They want to teach. They want to share principles and things that would be helpful. Sort of like Kevin and I get to do almost every day, in the field that we've chosen. Still say the same thing. The best way to do that is to start doing it. So in other words, don't think macro. Don't zoom all the way out and say, I need another degree. I need credentials. I need people who will be references. I'll have to apprentice somewhere. Don't do all that. That's not how it works, frankly. Instead, find at least one human being and mentor them. Take the things you know and teach it to them. And presumably someone who values and appreciates what you have to teach. And, there's an eHarmony involved and we're not all matches for each other. But I want to tell you, the world is hungry, starving in a sense, for wisdom and knowledge and answers in a time when all of life seems very confusing these days. If you've got some of those answers that would help a person, same spirit in which Kevin and I are doing this today, find that person, start helping them. Put yourself in the flow and you will find the flow. But you can't sit at home on the couch saying, yeah, man, the minute the flow shows up, Kevin, I'm
ready to go. That's
gone.
like saying, well, once the water is boiling, I'll put in the macaroni. Like, you got to turn on the dang stove.
Yes, that's right. I don't know if you know that story about Morgan Freeman went back to his hometown, met one of his high school friends, telling this really fast. And the person said, man, I sure love what you've done with your life, but I was just never able to get out of this town. You've seen this story, I think, on YouTube. And Morgan Freeman, in this candid photography thing, looks back to his high school friend and says, brother, the bus leaves twice a day. It's a powerful moment. It applies to all of us. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've always wanted to be an artist. I've always wanted to be a musician. I've always wanted to learn architecture and design. Okay. But you put yourself in that flow by doing, not by wishing. So I would only say, with great love again to this person, find someone to help buy the thing you want to do, and then use the Jim method until you invent a better one of take a step, see if you feel the flow. Take a step, see if you feel the flow, and carefully move yourself into another. I've done that 4 times in my life. You're looking at the 7.0 version of Jim. Lord help us. I don't know what the 8.0 version is going to be, Kevin, but it's the same way, same with everything.
We're getting some really great comments. And everybody, I am multitasking right now because Jim knows that at 10 minutes before the hour, when I told him to meet me here, my computer decided it needed a reboot. So I didn't get to do the things that I would have normally done for you all to make this a little more presentable. So I'm going to get a couple things ready here. But let me just say this. Some of the great comments that are coming in. Tamara said she made a step yesterday. She wants to help me. She made a step yesterday. So here's the thing. I just want to do a couple things before we wrap up. First of all, Jim, I want you to point people, and this is what I would have had to go across the bottom of the screen, and I don't have it now because of my computer.
Of course. No worries.
Where can you point if people want to learn more about you and about what you're doing with this work? You've got some product, you got some process. Like, where can people learn more, Jim? Where do you want
You're so kind to let me do that, Kevin. Thank you. I would offer everybody two things. One, I have a wonderful website, but the URL is a little bit long, so I'm going to say it and trust that Kevin will have it in some kind of material somewhere. But it's not hard. It's just long. It is Choose Your Life, one word, Jim Huling, JimHuling, one word, .com. So Choose Your Life, which is not in the absence of choice in that label, chooseyourlife.jimhuling.com. You go there, you find all the services that I offer and the things that I do. I predominantly work these days as a one-on-one executive coach or working with groups of people in a team. And then second, and Kevin, thank you again. Every day of my life, I post something that I hope is meaningful on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I post the same thing, by the way. So if there's not enough.
You don't have to follow him everywhere. Just pick one.
Today is my 283rd consecutive day of posting something that I hope is meaningful. Very often, like Kevin, I learned this from Kevin, with an attachment or a worksheet or something that will help you apply what I'm offering. They're not all great, but they're all meant to be great. And I hope between all of them, there are 287 of them right now out on LinkedIn, some of that will be helpful as well. So Kevin, thank you for letting me say.
So I put that on there, and one of my colleagues, Eric, thank you, Eric.
Eric, thank you, my friend.
If you're on LinkedIn, you can click on it right there. So I'm gonna, and Eric will follow this lead too because he's smart. I'm gonna put Virtual LeaderCon up here. It would be better if I had a capital V, L, and C just to make it easier to read. But virtualleadercon.com, you can learn more about what we're doing September 12th to 15th. 100%. You can watch it all day, 4 days in a row, completely free if you want to watch it live. But if you're, as the very first question we got today was, will this be recorded? All of Virtual LeaderCon is also recorded. So we have ways that you can get access to all of it, lifetime access afterwards as well. Jim, I've got a couple of final thoughts, but do you have any final thoughts today that you want to share with the group? So, maybe I'll ask it this way. Is there anything that you feel led to share?
The only thing is perhaps a thing that recaps everything we've said today is there really is no substitute or equivalent for the feeling of living on purpose. I'm just like everybody else. I love my morning coffee. I have jobs to get done during the day. I like to watch college football on Saturday afternoons. It's all the same. But the one thing that has enabled me in my own view to create what I feel has been a great life so far has been that I have always felt on purpose. I've always had a sense that I was doing something that mattered. And I've coached a lot of people who break my heart with what it feels like to wake up each day and have things to do and have coffee to drink and football to watch, all those things, but who are absent the sense that this matters, that I matter as a person, that I came here to do something important that no one else could do quite the way I could. If you're absent that feeling, it's easy to be hopeless. It's easy to be sad. It's easy to feel that the world is not a great place. But as Kevin said a moment ago, that difference is a 6-inch problem. It's right here. It's all in how you choose to think. So I encourage you today to start asking yourself, what's my purpose? What am I here to do? And Kevin, if I have 30 more seconds, maybe I would say real fast, if you struggle with that question, that's a little esoteric, then just be very tactical. When have I felt purposeful? Like make a list of your happiest moments, the moments in your life when you were the right person doing the right thing in the right way. You know what I'm talking about? You've had those moments where you're like, I'm riding the wave, baby. Well, what were you doing in those moments? Go back and study your own life. There's clues there. And then ask yourself, could I take the things I was doing in those peak moments and turn them into the driving force of my life? That's the easiest way to begin. And with that having been said, boy, Kevin, what a privilege to be your friend and a privilege to be on this broadcast today. Thank you for inviting me. I hope you'll invite me again and give me another chance to be on LeaderCon next year. And I love
We'll
you.
have
And
to see if you make the cut. We'll just say, see about
Thank you,
that.
brother.
So everybody, Jim basically said what I wanted to say to close, which is probably why, Jim, maybe people will get tired of us being together because we say the same things. But, as I close all of our podcasts and as I close many things that I do, I close with my favorite 2-word question. Now what? And so Jim gave you some tactical things that you can do next. But here's the thing. If you found this useful, great. But if you found it entertaining, wonderful. None of that matters. The only matter is taking action. And so the question, and what your action might be what Jim just described. It might be something else. It might be be clicking on chooseyourlife.jimhuling.com. It might be going to virtualleadercon.com. I hope it's both of those things. But whatever it is, taking some action is the only thing that will make a difference. It's the only way we will move closer to finding our purpose and our calling. It's the only way we'll change anything is by taking some action. So I will leave you all with that. Jim, thank you so much for being here, for investing this time. Thank you all for being here, whether it was live or later. I hope to see all of you at Virtual LeaderCon, September 12th to 15th. And with that, I will say farewell. Thanks, everybody. Have a remarkable day. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, sir.